Good evening, everyone. It's March 25th at 7 o'clock. And we have a quorum present, so we will start with the roll call.
That was all present. Right, Nelson present. Upsley present.
You can only have
Pete South now present.
Ashley Leduc present. Emily McCabe present.
Peter Michaelson present.
the Frank. Can you vote? Chill. Yeah, can be over to the meeting.
Okay. Recognize the front.
Jill, are you there? Oh, there she is. Jill. can
Hello.
you Hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, you want to just say you're present?
Yes, Jill Rafter participating remotely.
Okay, great. All right, excellent. So this meeting is the Warrant Committee meeting. It's being recorded, and a recording of it will be made available on the Warrant Committee website and on YouTube later. So our agenda this evening is just a minute to approve. We'll talk about the calendar. We have Yvonne here to talk about the overlay. And we'll get an update of the final status of the department budget. And then we'll talk about the letter, co-chair letter. Get an update on town meeting warrant articles. And then we'll talk about 4 articles. The senior veterans exemption, attack work off, Daniels and Pond Dam, conservation, trust appropriation, and accessory dwelling units. And then we'll have some discussions about committee updates and other information. So, everybody had a chance to, I will say this on the minutes, the March 11th. We have a new process that Brittany is shepherding. He takes his Zoom recording and get the transcript on.
That's amazing.
And then she sends the transcript into Chat GPT, and it spits out pretty. It's not, it needs a little attention, but it's a good start.
I love it. I thought it was excellent.
And that takes her like 5 minutes to do.
Sounds like something.
It took me probably 20 minutes.
That's great. Yeah.
Huge.
So the process actually will benefit from this,
Yeah.
because you're doing the meal
Well,
tonight.
connecting.
Hopefully be a lot smoother, Anyway, are there any comments or questions about the March 11th minutes? Okay, not entertained.
Move to approve the minutes submitted on March 11th, 2025.
Okay, give a second.
Second.
Okay. We'll go around the roll call.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Steve Callahan, yes.
Pete South, yes.
Ashley Leduc, yes. Emily McCabe, yes.
Peter Michaelson. Yes.
And Jill,
Jill Rafter, yes.
motion carries. All right. On the calendar, so we have our agenda this evening. Next Tuesday is the Warrant Committee hearing. Important that you're here for that one, physically. And then I wanted to get some feedback. There's probably a good likelihood that we will need one more meeting in April. And looking at April 8th, because the warrant report has to go to print on the 10th. So I'm not sure we're going to get through everything after the warrant hearing next week. So, if your conflict with the 8th with anybody, it's a Tuesday.
Yeah, I'll be out of the country on the 1st, though.
You told me that, yes, yeah.
I can tune in remotely. Try, but no.
All right, Okay, Yvonne,
Steve,
welcome.
do you want me to sit again?
Yeah, so to come sit up closer to us. And, thank you very much for, all that material.
Sure.
I think, we had questions, a couple people asked questions about the overlay account. So
Okay,
I don't think since I've been on the committee, we really dived into it. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to have those other articles that sort of tie into the overlay. So I thought we could go through it and educate.
sure.
So,
Perfect. Okay. Actually, if you don't mind, can I talk about the article first? Because the exemptions, I think maybe after I talk about the exemptions, that really plays into the overlay and you'll understand a little bit better, they tie in all together, so.
Okay, so this was the, so these are two articles, right? There's the,
So there's
actually multiple ones.
oh,
Yeah, hopefully you'll explain why we have like 3 articles for the exemption and then 5 articles altogether, like, for the seniors, one for the veterans, and one for the tax collector.
Right.
Okay.
that's right. Okay, so I did bring copies of what I sent, or I had you post on your Warrant Committee. If anybody wants a hard copy. Extras. Yep. And I actually gave it a sheet today, so it was, you don't have. So basically, all of our exemptions are mandated by the state. And so pretty much every town has the basic exemptions, and then by local option, you can adopt these other clauses. And so that's basically what we're asking you to do for the town. So basically, you can refer to this sheet that kind of.
Well, an extra copy.
So this was on your warrant committee. I sent this to you. Okay. I got one left, if anybody wants. So this, I basically do a brochure there, and so this is the middle of it. So these are in my office, and I send these over to Council on Aging, which basically explains all of our exemptions, and so that's what this is. So I've highlighted on there the changes that would be made with the warrant articles. The state requires you to do a separate article for each one of these. That's why we have so many. You can't just loop them all into one article. They want you to separate them. So that's why there is basically 3 articles, but we're adjusting the COLA. Actually, 4 articles for the exemptions. We're basically just adjusting a COLA. So on this sheet, we have clause 17D, which is for surviving spouses, minor children, and elderly persons. So 17E and 17F are going to adjust the amount of the exemption by a COLA, which is determined by the Commissioner of Revenue, and the whole estate amount. Okay, that's a maximum right now of $40,000. So that would also increase by a COLA, which is set by the Commissioner of Revenue. The same thing is going to happen with 22I. 22I is a part of the HERO Act, which is new this year, and that will adjust the amounts of the exemption for all of the veteran clauses, excluding clause 22B, which is a full exemption. And then 41D adjusts the income and the whole estate requirements for our current clause 41C, which is for the elderly. So basically, all of those articles are to adjust our current exemptions by a cost of living determined by the Commissioner of Revenue. So on this sheet that I passed out, I basically put in what the COLA adjustment has been for the last several years since fiscal 21. So if we had,
That's the first row. Okay.
yeah, so if we had adopted these clauses, now please keep in mind, we could not adopt 22I because that's brand new. This is what it does to what the limits are. So that gives you an idea of how this will go in the future. So right now, for clause 17D, it's an exemption amount of $175. Okay, we do double the exemptions in Medfield. which makes-
That means 17 now.
Yes, 17F, so it's going to change, 17F is going to change clause 17D. We currently have clause 17D. So that's going to, clause 17F will change it by a cost of living adjustment.
Oh, I'm confused. Okay. So in this table, there's a 17E, a 17F,
Right.
41D, and that,
And that means
where's the 17D?
17D will no longer exist because it's being replaced by E and F.
E. Okay.
Yes.
Ah,
Okay,
So-
and clause 41C will be replaced by clause 41D with the COLA adjustment. So 17D is our current exemption, and clause 41C is our current exemption. And the veterans have a whole bunch of others.
All right. Okay, so the current exemption for 17D is what? Is 40,000?
Okay, yes, so with 17D, it's a whole estate requirement besides an age, or if you're a surviving spouse. You have to be over 65, or you have to be a surviving spouse. Your whole estate requirement, not including your house, cannot exceed 3,000. So what that would do is that would increase that 40,000 by a cost of living every year.
Yeah.
And so that's why I give you this chart, kind of gives you a what if going forward.
But this assumes it was in place going back to 2021.
Right, I don't have a future COLA, so I took the past ones to give you an example.
So let's see the 40,000, the schedule 17E, which is places 48,087
That's if it was in place since fiscal 21.
if it was in place.
Yeah, so for fiscal 21, the cost of living, so the next line is fiscal 21, and the cost of living adjustment was 2.3%.
Oh, okay, so you're just increasing by that, I get it.
Yes, and so it keeps increasing as you go along.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what was, if it passes,
mhm,
and let's say that the inflation is 2.3%. It would go.
That's what it would go to.
2026.
It would be
40,000,
exactly.
not 48.
No,
Okay.
no,
Oh.
I'm sorry, that's,
Oh.
maybe I was trying to give you
I got it.
a perspective on what the cost of living adjustments have been in the past. And if we had adopted this, what it would be, or going forward, giving a good idea of what it would be in the future as well. So the same thing goes for the clause 17F, right? So that would increase the amount given of the exemption. So the 40,000 is a requirement. The 17F is the amount given in the actual tax reduction.
Okay.
So that currently is 175. If it went up by 2.3 next year, it would go to 179.
Yeah.
But we do double. So it's 358. Medfield has already adopted doubling. So
Then
then,
that's the only payment they get. That's the only exemption they get off their taxes. Is that
that's
pretty
right,
good?
unless they do the senior workup program, which is a different thing. But yes, for this clause, that's all they get.
Okay.
And so the clause 41C, which is now going to clause 41D, that has a whole estate requirement and an income requirement maximum. So the COLA would change that maximum for the whole estate and the income. It doesn't change the amount given. The amount given is currently 1,000 and we double it to 2,000, so that's not affected. It's just increasing the income.
So the
requirement.
goal doesn't apply to the amount given.
Correct, just to
That's why,
the,
that's why it's not on the chart.
exactly. I don't, why, they didn't. And so they also didn't do anything for the blind people either, that, there's no increases for that. So with the veterans, there is no income or asset obviously requirement with the veterans, so that's a new must have a disability. Depending on your disability rating, that you get into the clause.
Remind me, I'm sorry.
That's okay,
17E is for seniors,
yes.
17F is what?
It's also for seniors, it's the same clause. So we currently have clause 17B, which is for seniors that are over 60.
They broke it out, so it's good. So
You have
E
to-
and F are for seniors.
Because you could adopt one or the other.
Okay.
Oh, that's what I was gonna get. They're basically
They're
targeted.
optional.
You can't really do both.
You can do both. I mean, you can, yeah, you can do both, but you don't have to. You could adopt one and not the other. You could say, I want to give them more money, but I want that whole estate requirement to remain at 40. Or you could say, I want the whole estate requirement to go up so that maybe more people qualify, but I want to keep the amount the same. So we're recommending, for the selectmen are recommending, doing both. Yeah, so, but, and since they're optional, you would have to adopt them separately.
What's 41D? Is that seniors too, or no?
Yes, so that is seniors as well.
What's the difference?
The difference is that there is an income requirement or maximum and a whole estate maximum. With the other one, it's just a whole estate maximum. You could make anything.
But if I'm a senior, that's confusing, which one do I apply?
Well, you basically apply for either. The application is the same for either one. Depending on where your income is and where your assets are, is the one that you will fall into.
It'll be pretty close to the assets, right? Just that income.
Right, there is no income requirement with clause 17. Right. Whereas with clause 41, there is an income and an asset requirement.
All right. Okay.
Can I ask a stupid question? Sure, it won't be.
Sure.
Let's just pretend we're looking at whole estate married under 41B. Right now it's, you said, I think it has 50,000, and that's under 17B.
No, that's under 41.
The 41B.
Right. So for 17, it's very strange too. With 17, it doesn't matter if you're married or you're single.
Okay.
But for some reason, under 41, it matters if you're married or you're.
And 41D then, if it's 50,000 today.
Yes,
That's,
that's,
this is approved.
so if, I don't know what the COLA is, that hasn't been determined yet. That's why I was giving examples of different COLAs.
And that's if your income is, what happens is over 50. You don't get the exemption at all.
That's right. You don't get it. And you wouldn't fall under the other one too, because the other one is 40.
I'm just trying to get this, I'm just trying to get on the same page, okay?
How many people currently take advantage of
Okay, so that's, if you look further on the chart,
That's the 166.
we'll talk, those are the numbers.
that?
So after the veteran increases, okay, the current numbers are listed for you. So I have 38, 22 vets, which is a standard vet, 122A vet, 2122D vets, 5 17Ds, and all of those would be subject to a COLA. And then I have 122D veteran, which is a full amount. So that is not subject to any COLA. It's blind. 441C. So the amount is not affected by a COLA, but the whole estate, the income. Correct. So total exemptions, if they all received the full amount, is 98,650. So the potential increase, if these were adopted, I'm basing it on last year's 3.4%, is about 2,500.
You see that?
It's kind of, it's right here.
It's at the
No, I
bottom.
know. Yeah, I don't see this one. Oh, there it is.
257.
Yeah, okay.
So it's about.
Right.
So all of this, all of this,
$100,000. 101,000.
101,
That
right,
you're projecting if adopted.
right,
For
but
all of
but
these
it's
exemptions.
right, but it's not much of an increase.
Okay.
Because right now,
You're already
it's
in.
98.
Yes, right. Like,
And then 166 relates to 101 now. On the bottom of the page, it says.
Okay, so the 166, okay, this goes into the overlay discussion. The senior tax work off right now, there's a maximum number of workers of 65. They all get 1,000. Oh, excuse me. So if you take the 65 and you add that to the 101, that's the 166. So that is an estimate on what the overlay will be charged for the senior tax work off and the exemptions with the slight increase.
that work up, so that's the bigger. When you have work up, that's federal.
So, so that is
Right.
something you're gonna have to discuss with your team. You know, right now we have 65 workers and they're at $1,000. The selectmen can determine the number of workers. They could reduce that, but the amount is going up to 1,500. She'll probably talk about that.
Is there a lottery for this?
There is a lottery for it, yes, if they have more applicants than they have.
And there's no means that,
There's no,
no, someone living in
it's just your age.
$1.5 million home.
It's just your age. So if the selectmen should not reduce the number of workers, I'm looking at 97,500, but that isn't until fiscal 27, because fiscal 26, the program is already started.
We, we turn people away from the program. Because there are more people who want to be in it.
Depends on the year. Some years we have more people than we have spots, some years we don't have enough.
And the agreement is how many hours they have to work.
It's about 67, it's
Yeah.
based on minimum wage.
It's
So it's-
$15 an hour.
It's $15 an hour, you make maximum 1,000. I think it's about 67. So the number of hours would increase.
Yep.
To 1,500, because they still go on at 15.
So you're saying it's all adds up to 166.
And it won't impact that
That's-
till 27.
Right, so the senior
Senior,
tax, right,
senior, yeah, the incremental 32.5 won't impact us till
27,
27.
right,
So we have a appropriation budget this year, 200,000.
right, that's the.
This would use most of that.
It does currently.
And means that there aren't a lot of debate places.
No, we'll go over that in the overlay. So does anybody have any questions or issues with any of this? I'm sorry
I
that.
mean, my only comment is it's sort of complicated.
I administer it anyway.
It's like,
That's complicated.
oh, there's like 5 articles. Yeah, 5 articles. Yeah, articles, 3 for seniors, 1 veteran, and work.
Again,
So I
because
think, I'm just thinking town meeting, you get a lot of questions about it.
well, it's
So
basically just
it's-
basically increasing what we have by a cost of living.
Right.
I mean,
I
that's,
guess
that's a very
simple-
basic,
that's
a very simplified answer.
But there could be people who don't understand the program and want to know. works and, but basically what we all just.
And when was the last time we did this? Like why are we doing these articles?
So maybe Christine wants to talk more about that, but the selectmen wanted to review, what we could do for seniors. Right?
Yes, so last year, actually fiscal year 24, they asked me to go through what we offered for existing senior exemption projects, mitigation fund, and what could we do to help our seniors with any sort of tax relief. And so we did a deep dive into what other exemptions we offer. That's what it is.
They've never, but the estimate, oh, so you're saying it's to adjust for cost of living was the way you had offered that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
You did a
there
lot
were
of work
additional,
for-
yeah, there were additional local options that we could take to enhance what we already offered.
Does it provide like a line of sight, like, hey, there'll be a COLA adjustment moving forward? I think that's what this is.
Yes, once you put it in place, it would have to be voted out again, so it stayed in place.
Which may be even better, sure.
I think we're gonna have to come up with like answers to assumed questions, like what's the dollar impact of these articles, you know, you have ready.
The number of people who benefit from it.
Yeah.
What the
That
average
would be
is
my
and what the
suggestion
average
is
is.
to have
Yeah.
that.
Is there a way that
Yeah.
you could work with the moderator to put them together
Okay, cute.
in a grouping? And
Well, they are grouped together now.
Yeah, I mean, like a subtitle,
In our work committee report, we could actually explain some of it.
right, but to say, and to put the point of showing what seniors are eligible for, or, what we do, put it into that category, what the select board wants it to be presented. We could start with that, maybe,
Yeah, I think.
and have a summary.
They put it,
You're messing with my article numbering, Mr. Stein.
Why is
Just
that?
pointing that out.
What is it there?
Because if I'm gonna give them a separate category, I'm gonna move them to out of financial into a separate category. Just saying, I'm happy to do that.
I think they should.
I think what an example.
We should help educate.
Yeah, I think once you have the warrant, the warrant committee report underneath it, it on an
But just
example. of what
reading
we
the
really
article,
offer.
it's very confusing.
Absolutely. Thank you to the Commonwealth.
Oh, thank you.
Could you explain the process the president would go through applying? I mean, income verification can be done for tax returns, but asset verification, how do you perform that?
So we do require the tax returns, and we do require bank statements, any type of filing. I mean, it is,
Your office goes through all those applications.
I do. I'm the only one who does.
You know that we got a trust in him somewhere.
I don't, but the income tax return is pretty telling. You can usually make.
You said that you were regarding senior tax for more required in fiscal 27 because we're already in fiscal 26.
We're already in the program for 26. Yes, because
26 goes start with July 1.
I know that. I know that. So, but how it works is senior tax work off, they pull the people if there's a lottery in November. And the program technically starts January 1st. So the seniors work from January 1st until October, mid-October. Because then in November, they get their abatement off of their taxes. The exemption comes off of their taxes in November, which is for fiscal 26, because we're done with 25. So they have to work in a calendar year type of scenario, and we apply the exemption to a fiscal year. Yeah.
How do people know?
These programs. So these programs, well, they're in my office, they're online, and they're at the senior center. And I have given talks before.
Is only 5 that have to. Their income verified.
I do require the tax returns for 17,
Right, and there's 5.
right, and there's 4, and there's
41 C.
41 Cs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are people that we have turned away in the past because their levels have been close, but over.
Yeah.
And so we don't, so adopting a COLA would potentially help more. people.
Are there any more questions on just the article? Where she goes into?
How did you come up with 1,500?
That's the maximum, that's the maximum, that's what,
In the
by the state.
post.
The bet amount?
No, Article 18, the senior tax work.
Any other question?
Do you want to talk about the senior tax work or are you good with that?
I mean, unless people have questions about that, that's just a great lottery, there's no requirements or.
There's no requirements, but just to give you a little bit of context, so this was originally passed in 2000. We did change the, we increased it to 1,000 back in 2014. But what I found after I took over as town administrator is that we were not exactly following what the bylaw said. And it had evolved over about, 20, 22 years into who qualified, who didn't qualify in terms of whether or not you were working part-time for the town. So this past year, 2 years ago, we asked the Council on Aging to enforce the bylaw. And we had unintended consequences for the school and the town because that eliminated our substitute teachers who work a few days at the school, but then also do the senior tax work off. The way the bylaw was passed in 2000, you couldn't work for the town or receive compensation at all. So we had to actually have people choose, did they want to substitute for the school during the year or do the senior tax work off for us? So we have changed it to allow them to substitute up to 15 hours a week, essentially. But it also impacted employees in the town hall who do the senior tax work off for us and that would like to continue to work for us, and it eliminated. So we actually lost some employees at the town hall, super part-time employees, but incredibly beneficial and helpful to us. We lost those as part of enforcing the bylaw. So we worked with the Council on Aging to actually change it to what had been under practice, but make the bylaw actually reflect it. So we were doing what we said.
Any other questions on senior tax work off? Ed, you okay?
Yeah.
All right, so you can do the overlay.
So I do have extra copies if anybody wants. But I emailed you over.
Bunch of spreadsheets.
Okay, so I don't had a chance to review the information. Basically, the overlay is used to cover the exemptions and the abatements. And we are also required to cover any possible cases. And we are also required to cover any outstanding receivables, tax receivables. So that's basically what the overlay is. It is not voted at town meeting. It is set by the assessors based on their experience, based on what we see as our needs are. And then the only one that can release the overlay is the Board of Assessors. The selectmen can ask us to do that or to look at that, but typically we look at our overlay and see where our positions are, and then we offer. That comes to the case where we're asked if we can release any. So that's the overlay in a nutshell. The forms I gave you in the website, there's the OL1, which looks like this, and the schedule OL1. I gave you from fiscal 25, that is a part of our tax rate recap. If we do not comply with what the state feels is a viable overlay balance, we will not get tax rates.
Can I ask you a question on this sheet? Uh, You know, a town like Medfield that collects what, 98% of our taxes. It seems very conservative to say for reserve for receivable. Full receivable,
It's required.
just the way the law is.
Yes,
Okay. So that's a lot of money. It's just a, it's 98% of it seems like a. Yeah, right.
but
Everybody has to do it that way.
everybody has.
Okay.
So if you look at the OL1, that was the overlay balance as of June 30th of 24, and then it adds on the overlay for fiscal 25. And so it gave you an overlay balance available at 820, 788. And then they go through their estimated formulas based on averages and such. But the next page is my spreadsheet. I track the overlay, and Andrew and I balance the cash balance annually. And so I've given you an up-to-date of where we are with the overlay. So if you look at fiscal 25, the last column, it was the 204, 476, 74, which you saw on the OL1, reduced by exemptions to date, abatements to date. And so our total balance for all of our years actually 534, 846 versus on the OL1, it looks like we have a balance of 679, 068. That's
Where is the 534? What is it adding up? I couldn't follow that. No, it's just-
so that's the total of all the years from 2018 to 2025.
So
But
is-
why are we only going back?
Because we only go back to 2018 because everything else has been released.
Oh, okay.
So the remaining balance number, like 2018, that's 73,000. Take that number each of the years through 25, it adds up to 534.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So it's basically the leftover that
It's the
they didn't need this year. that
Why does it-
accumulated.
Go into the overlay beginning of the next year.
That is
That's
the
not a good
overlay.
way to begin.
That was the overlay for 2018.
That's the increment that.
Oh,
That's
got
just
it.
the overlay. for that
Okay.
year. That's the appropriation for that year, so that's beginning balance. That confused me too.
Yeah, okay.
Beginning balance.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, thank you. All right.
Yeah.
So let's release it.
We don't have a
won't.
say in what.
We already released
No, but
150,000.
They've already released 150,000 for the fiscal year 26 budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're using that to fund part of the modular and the Medcomet.
Oh, great.
What is that, when you reduce it by the 150, what's the threshold that it requires?
So the state requires back to you have to cover your abatements, you have to cover your exemptions, and you have to cover the estimated receivable.
For the 406.
And that's low.
406 is under.
Yeah, and that's actually the lower year.
So 406 against 534.
And well, I'm not done yet. People have until April 1st. So I'm not done yet. So that's just current as of.
So you're releasing 150 of the 534,
The 534, so.
or is that after?
That's after we release
Okay.
that.
We came up with 150 number?
Yes, that's-
Who are elected officials. Board of
They
Selectmen.
voted together. We really don't have a say over this account.
No, but I will say, if you read the information in here, it says that your annual amount should be 1%, 0.8 to 1% budget. We are nowhere near that.
Yeah. I sent around,
We are nowhere near that.
I did this myself, I can, let me just give you a copy. Two copies for you guys. I just went to the deal, but I can't print it out, that deal.
You love that website.
It printed out Medfield overlay account. And it has, going back to 2016, I just went back 10 years, it has more than that. But it shows you the dollar amounts. So in 2025, that's 204 number. And then the percentage of the overlay, the percentage of the total levy. That's the ratio she was talking about, that in that article. 0.8 to 1%. Yeah. And we're way under that.
But
This is-
why is that,
Why do
but,
we use that?
where's the 500 go then? Like, you said we have 534, but this, says we only have two.
The 534 is the balance from all of the years.
That's the it's the balance.
It's not the annual.
This is the annual.
Oh, so the target, the annual target
annual
should be the
numbers.
0.8 to
Yes,
1, but that is somewhat
that's
suggested that we may not agree with.
well,
From a philosophical standpoint.
they're talking about all towns in Massachusetts.
Right.
And you deal, towns and cities that. don't
Yeah,
collect
makes sense.
98.
Yeah, not everybody.
Yeah,
You can see ours is pretty steady though. Going back to 2020. It looked like it dropped, 16 to 2020. But since 2020, it's been pretty steady as a percentage of our money.
Is the state at all monitoring the fact that we're not at 0.8?
They look at the OL1 to make sure that we're covering their averages,
Okay.
to make sure that we have a
But
conservative.
no
balance.
one is giving you, quote, giving you grief about the fact that it doesn't make it 0.8.
Okay. So they look at this and they say,
The OL1.
your average 5 years was 141,000 that you. Deductions and
Are you or the
Maybe.
assessors concerned?
they think, you got a balance of 406.
Walk me through that on that OL on the back. You had on line 8, you have the 679,000, which is your balance. OL1. Then potential future liabilities. 399 is saying. How did you get this?
Real estate tax receivables, and so those are the taxes that were not collected. Taxes that aren't collected as of June 30th. And that comes from Andrew in Georgia.
So the way I look at this is I say, well, look, there's a balance of 670 million, assuming that's before you at least 150, right? So you take 150 off the 670, right? And you get down to 534. So this is on the second page. Right? Okay. So they look at this and say, well, look, there's 400,000 potential liabilities. You got 679. You're not going to be concerned.
Right.
And then they look at the 5-year average over on the right.
So at the end of
They're
the
saying, the average over a 5-year period of abatement and exemption, only 141,000.
Does that mean that what you said earlier, that our percentage is below, I guess, the state's average? Is that the same for the state requirements or state's average?
Their recommendations.
The recommendations. Does that mean that our what we're talking about here, our exemptions are below average?
No,
Could be, yeah, it could be, we're appropriating what kind of equal to what we're, we're giving out, so.
Well, I don't know.
It could be other towns that have higher.
Other towns don't, like, Medfield adopted the double. Okay, of the exemptions. Other towns do not.
Right.
So they might have more people that are on the program, but they might actually be paying out less.
Every town's gonna be different. Every town has a different.
Then you have-
percentage.
Right.
And then every town may or may not have these. exemptions.
That was actually my original question was, you said that the select board asked you guys to come up with how can we help seniors? And I would have thought one of the first things would have been to say we should change the requirement number. Which might have cost more, but we did a COLA, or recommended a COLA. But then, what, I mean, maybe that's just because that was what was submitted by the select board, that's what we went with, or,
Well, we looked at the options, and these are options that were available that we hadn't taken advantage of. And so it was time to take advantage of them to help, give them the opportunity, those that didn't qualify, maybe give them the opportunity to qualify, and those that do get it, like the 17, that's not a lot of money. It would give them a little bit more.
Is it, let me sort of ask a question different. Could you have, it sounded to me like maybe the 40,000, can't change that, you could do a COLA, but you can't change the 40.
You can't change the 40. You have to-
Does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
these are all state.
the state said you can't change it.
These are all
Okay, that's
state. Okay, so granted, it's a local option, but the recommendation of the COLA, that is
You
what
could
the
do
state
that.
says you can do.
Got it. And
You
because the
only-
state says you can't change 40, we kept it up. That's very straightforward. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Is there any other questions?
But so back to the exemptions though, and the senior tax work off, depending on what that is. So if they go up with 65, if you have a max worker of 65 and it goes to 1,500, that's 97.5. Okay, and my potential exemptions as of right now, it's 101. So you're looking at close to 200 just for exemptions.
Yeah.
And my overlay is 200.
That was
The
my
annual overlay is too much.
So that may have to
Pretty
change,
substantial balance.
that may have to, right, but that may have to change in the future
Right.
depending on what
Yeah.
they do.
534 completed itself out.
But you just be
Right.
eating into your overall balance.
Yeah. Until they, well, they every year they decide what the annual appropriation.
Right.
Right, and
They
the other,
up that.
the other thing with the
It's not, there's nothing that,
But it would keep, yeah.
they don't vote on the overlay.
no,
It's included in the budget. But we don't vote on it.
right, the reason why you can't vote on it is because it is the rounding. So if you notice, all of those numbers aren't 200, they're like 198, 16, 206, because the tax rate has to be rounded to dollars and cents.
They vote on it.
And that way, you're about, anywhere between 11 and 16,000 has to be accounted for when we round the tax rate. And that comes off of, or added to the overlay to make the tax rate.
This is the creative part of being a citizen. Yvonne, job.
One last
Nobody
question.
wants it.
This is what we're really trying to hold on to her. as hard as we
Yeah,
can.
totally. I just one last question on the sheet that you put together. It's 101, 222,
Mhm.
and then I think you added 65 and got the 166 at the bottom.
Right, that's my estimate for fiscal 20.
Right. But then it sort of seems like it could be 97. Also.
27.
No, that's for 27.
That's
The 97, no matter what happens with that, the 1,500, that will not take effect until fiscal
Okay.
27.
And so how does the 166 relate to the 204 on the other page?
So the 166 is potentially what
Exempt.
could come out for exemptions
And-
off of the 200.
Right.
The
Does that blow up
204.
to 204 or it's no big deal?
No, still loaded.
Well, this is potential for fiscal 26.
Right. So you're still
Yeah.
in the butt.
Yeah.
That's good.
We're still good with 200. I'm not asking you to change them. We're not.
We don't have the authority to change.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said ask. I should have said, telling you.
Yeah. So this number is below this other number.
So I mean, my purpose here too is to, the overlay is conservative.
Yes.
We are conservative.
Yeah.
And it is also reasonable.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you for understanding all of this.
If you have any other questions, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer anything.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go a little out of order. That's okay. We'll do the department stuff.
Oh, you can go till the end.
Get you.
Yeah.
Yes. But before we talk about that, let's just quickly, so the draft co-chair letter that was circulated, page letter that goes in the warrant report. Bob and I sort of, we worked on that, we wordsmithed it. We wanted to share it with all of you. And are there any thoughts or comments on that letter?
It was very, very well done. I'm really glad that you had that. Challenges area that talks, we talked about it in the last meeting, potential. Well, they said that belongs in there. Very well done. Well, very important. Right.
I just wondered if I didn't understand something that the citizens might not understand it either, and I'm talking about page 2, paragraph 3, the bold statement. Town does not have the ability to fund this and other significant building projects in the 20-year capital plan without debt exemption override votes. I just think that that's not like general public.
Which part, what is that?
Like, what is the debt exemption override vote? Like, is that the Prop 2.5 vote? No, I don't think so, right? So what is?
There's two kinds of override.
Okay,
There's an operating override, right, which impacts the tax levy every year. That goes into the 2.5 calculation. It's a permanent increase to your tax levy forever. Well, I'll let you do it under. So there's that's the operating override.
okay,
That's for the operating budget. Then there's an override when you borrow money. That's a temporary tax. Because as you pay it off,
yeah,
it goes away.
got it.
So they add those two together. And that's how they calculate your tax bill, like it's mailed to you. So this, what we're talking about here are borrowings.
Okay, well, can I reread it with that in mind?
So the debt exception override vote is to borrow.
The borrow, yeah.
Because it's saying they can't do this without. But that, I had a question on that too, which that assumes we wouldn't choose to do some type of operational budget belt items in order to fund it, right? There's an assumption embedded.
Well, there's an assumption that we would not try to fund it out of the operating,
Right,
which because the numbers are so huge that Christine wouldn't have a job, teachers, fire, police would all get laid off, so there'd be a severe, cut in.
Just from groups and budgets, out of 70.
Our budget is 70 million,
So,
so you'd have to lay off.
Well, the preceding paragraph. Says that this current budget was reached in a very tight year.
Right,
So
Yes.
it's consistent not to suggest that we, as an alternative, we could just cut this budget, which we think is bare bones. I think.
I agree with
To
you.
use terminology, you know, it's not a fiscal term, but I think it's very close to bare bones. We don't have the room in the current operating budget to fund that kind of budget.
Levy goes up 2.5% plus some new growth every year. So it's self-contained, for how much more revenue we get every year.
I totally agree with all that. I just like feel like if I got this in the mail and I read this and I was your average Medfield citizen, I would not understand some of this stuff, but I'm trying to give feedback. And I wonder if you could put a paragraph in front of the outlooks and challenges and just like explain that little bit that just says like our operating, you know. Does anyone disagree? Like, I just feel like it's not, I think I would just be like.
No, that's a good
It's
suggestion.
actually not a disagreement. I think this is
That's why
good input. We want people to
I know.
hear it and understand it. So wording is important.
Yeah.
I feel like
we had a couple cents.
Like a couple sentences at the beginning, just to be like. Or maybe it's in between paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, because. When I joined the Warrant Committee, I didn't know what Prop 2.5 was, and I don't know if, like, the average.
Well,
Especially,
you know, you don't need to do it right now, but
Yeah.
what if we get some feedback after tonight?
Yeah.
Next day or so?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to send me some.
Anyway.
Sure, yeah, sure.
And I think it's really, that's really important. That
It's just very confident.
that average, the average or the person, we want them to read this and understand.
So that's the point, yeah, so I just,
So
yeah,
we make some comments would be great.
okay.
I
Well,
think
thank you.
Anybody.
also like kind of burying the lead a little bit too, like your participation is critical to the success of moving our town forward, you know?
And I would also add that if anyone who thinks that this current budget has some bad, then we should.
Well, it's not bad. I just think, like, the other way to say this same exact sentence is that we hit the budget perfectly this year, but there's a big school thing that's coming up, and then now there's a bunch of capital stuff coming up. So expect a bunch of stuff the years ahead. It's sort of the same sentence, right? And
Again, submit it there. That's a good.
I'm just saying, like, that's just turning the same thing around.
No, I'm just saying though, that in the current, you know, we have to vote on the budget as one of the articles. And if there's not confidence that we have that there's somehow more room in, you know, for reduction, then let's put it up.
Say something that every year is becoming increasingly difficult.
Yeah.
Did you say that in here?
Yeah, that's that.
Yeah.
Listen, if you have suggestions
Okay,
to improve it, I would love to hear.
Okay.
Let's just send them to me.
okay, oh,
Then I'm sure we should wordsmith it right.
Right.
No.
Totally.
am I allowed to send one email? I'm just like, I'm afraid to email anybody.
Just send it. No, you
Is that open meeting thing, like, can I
well,
email to you?
just don't, you can't send an email to more than 4 people.
Can you send the Word document?
Yes. Yes, I can do that.
Okay, well, I'm not that good with words, but I
Yeah.
can.
Sending it down to the right message.
That's a very important point.
So we'll work on that. If you could do that in the next couple of days. 'Cause
Yeah.
The thought process is we would have this available for the warrant hearing. It's like a.
If that's true, then the past tense held on the first paragraph, that was a little confusing to me, but I assume this is gonna get released after
This will be
April 1st.
Yes, it's gonna get printed in the warrant that gets mailed
Right, okay, yeah, that's what I
to
thought.
every
Okay,
residence like in the second half of April.
got it, okay.
Okay,
Will the scorecard be a part? I know it's linked in this letter, but.
yeah, it's gonna, the scorecard gonna be in the warrant.
But will it be mailed in advance? With this?
It'll be printed in the warrant.
It'll be printed.
It'll be
in the warrant.
the warrant.
Right.
Okay,
That's
maybe
the
there's
email,
a
though.
selectman's message.
Oh, yeah, in the warrant. that's
And then
mailed to
a
everyone.
moderator's message, and then a warrant committee message.
Right? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for doing all that.
Mhm.
Yes.
No pride in the.
Okay. I know our conservation committee folks are patient with me, so
Right.
why don't you come on up and we will learn about your two articles. So if my introduction, John Woodall is the conservation committee and Ted Farrow. On that. Sure. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. for coming. And we have all your materials. We got them. But we all have questions. Thank you for pulling that together.
That was primarily John's work.
Okay.
PowerPoint, so in terms of indeed the experts are probably going to be mostly directed to John because he knows most of that damage.
Yeah. But I think for the benefit of these meetings are recorded and some people watch them, it might be helpful to go through your. You can just put it up on the screen and people can see it at all its best. Well, I'll let you start. Okay, then so there's two articles. There's the Danielson Pond one and then conservation.
So starting with Danielson Pond, what we like to do is just give you some background about the pond and why we are where we are. So you can just go to the next slide. And it's been a pond since about 1880. It was ice surface on it, but it was donated to the town in 1993 and deeded to the Conservation Commission. And so the problem with me is that the dam is very old and it's not repaired. So inspections in 2014, 2017, and 2018. 3 different consultants all find the dam to be in poor condition. The problem being that then the state classifies the dam as a dam in poor condition and requires us to fix it. So we go to the next slide. This is the main issues they're found: the trees and vegetation on top of the dam. That's really bad because the tree roots go down into the dam. If a tree then falls over, it creates a void in the dam. When's the tree going to fall over? It's going to fall over during something like a large rainstorm or a hurricane. It could then create an opening that the water could come through. It then quickly creates a hole in the dam. The dam contents come rushing out and the downstream people get flooded. So that's the issue. The other next one, structural deficiencies. That's mainly around the idea that the back slope of the dam is steeper than would be required by any modern design. There are areas observed of seepage where there's water leaking through the dam, although it's questionable. It's not always found. It depends on which year inspection you look at. And then within the spillway section, there's openings, voids, and the walls are kind of failing in various sections, again, because it's old and hasn't been repaired. The big one, this next one, is that with all the what they call stop logs, but basically boards that go across the spillway, with all of the boards in place, the capacity is around 20 cubic feet per second. And that if you had a 1 in 100 year storm, you have to be able to pass about 210 cubic feet a second. So it's a factor of 10 differential there. And so the only way that it works is if, in this case, the DPW goes out, removes the logs proactively prior to a storm, and you can then, again, it's very close, but you can probably pass the 1 in 100 year storm with all the stop logs removed, with a combination of what can go through the channel plus what would accumulate in the pond, which was then empty. But you have to successfully anticipate that there's going to be an event and actually then take action on it, on your anticipation. And so one of the
Is that, excuse me, might I ask a question?
yeah, no, that's good.
Is that, so does DPW, they do some maintenance, do they kind of, if there's a big storm and it gets high, do they go down and do some of that today?
They have been at some points in the past, they have.
Okay.
Other times, there's a photo later in the presentation, for example, where the water level is really higher than it should be, and none of the stop logs were removed in that case. But it wasn't that big a storm, and so probably wasn't really anticipated.
Sorry.
But no, interrupt all you want, that's kind of the idea. And so, what we said is that if you're looking for something that you can do to try and improve the situation, removing the vegetation and the trees on top of the dam would be a good thing. Okay, that's relatively straightforward. So, okay, then next slide. So the state has an order of non-compliance that the town has an order from the state since 2018. We were required to bring the dam into compliance by the end of 2019, which we have not done. And so we're potentially liable for a fine of up to $5,000 a day since then. Okay, so there's risk. There's a series of things that are required because of the fact that the dam is out of compliance. One of them is inspection, repeat inspection every 6 months. Now that's kind of predicated on the idea that you're going to be finished fixing the dam within 2 years. We've been carrying on doing these inspections for years at this point. Yeah. So it's an ongoing cost that the town has as a result.
I say, got a $5,000 fine. It's just not my experience that what the state can impose a fine, it doesn't. So how has it come to pass? I impose these fines.
It's because we've been showing goodwill, I guess, and trying to make progress, and at the same time applying for state funding to do the repairs.
They have been sending letters and saying, oh, we're working on these things.
But we have to come up with things that we're doing to show progress, or I think that could disappear.
Right.
I think it's wonderful, though. I just shocked.
It's okay. I think that there's another factor here, and I'll give you some opinion that I probably should. Is that the consultants have all found the dam to be deficient, and that there's significant hazard and a risk of loss of life. I don't believe that there really is a risk of loss of life from this dam.
Human life?
Human life.
Human life? Okay.
There is one house that would be, and Route 27 would be potentially inundated if the dam were to release it, lose the dam. And so there would be flooding on a section of Route 27. And there's one house where the water is actually calculated to come up a few inches up on the side of the house, but it's hard to imagine loss.
The part of, I was looking at some of the map.
Yes,
it seems like it's like it's worse around South Street and 27.
Yes.
They intersect. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a busy.
Yes.
Yeah, and so if you were, I suppose, extremely unlucky and there were a car there will be some flooding. It's not going to be like a tidal wave across the road. It would be predicted to be like, a few inches of water on the road. So, again, the dam is significant, but it's not a very large impoundment, really, in comparison with lots of things. It's not like the Hoover Dam behind. It's the amount of water that we can accumulate within the pond is actually very small in comparison with the amount of water in the watershed that you get if it rains during like a 1 in 20 year storm or something. There's way more water from the rain than there is in the pond.
Right.
So it's like that's what you see on all those charts, is that the flooding with the dam failure is not all that different than the flooding without the dam failure. You get flooding either way. It's really what it comes to.
Yeah, they were very complicated.
Yes,
I understand.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was trying to say, is that to actually go through all of the report and really understand all of it is a bit of a chore.
And he's done a huge amount of work. And
I think somebody needs to do that because it seems important. But,
and I think condensed it really, really nicely.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Talk about your progress on the thing too.
So there is some progress that's been made, and the town is required to do what they call phase 2 inspection. And most of that was done. I mean, most of that really relates to the report that was done by PAR, where they outlined options, how we would be able to, that's part of the report. But now I think we cut it out. You didn't want it. I had a slide in there and you made me take it out.
Oh, we forgot what it
The one that they're looking at.
It's Frank's fault, we blame.
I said to the bottom, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we need it.
But see this nice.
All right, but anyway, and it, yeah, the next slide would be the. And that's the. Yeah, the certificate was sent out, and then there was the initial phase 1 inspection, and then the most elements of phase 2 inspection are complete. But the selection of a plan for how we're going to do the upgrade or removal is really pending. I mean, I looked at what the select board has said in the past, and I have the impression that they favor retaining the dam rather than removing it. But I would still call that pending at this point. It's nothing more than an impression. And drafts have been prepared for the O&M manual and the emergency action plan update, which are required. And we need to circulate those to the people who are recipients of that plan and get them to sign off on it essentially. But we do have drafts for those things now.
Can I just add, John did that. So the first O&M plan.
Yeah, I think I should get that senior citizen credit.
You know,
You can't be on a commission.
Yeah.
It's not very bad.
That's the weird thing about it. You can't be on.
But he did.
No, I don't know.
Or, well, it was done by a consultant, so
Yeah.
he's done it and he's updated the emergency action plan, which is required to be, finalized this year. So that was reviewed, so he's doing, he just.
You're doing all the things to
Thank
avoid
you.
the $5,000 a day.
Yeah, because it seems like, again, like we're responsible for taking care of this and no one else is doing it. And then we're just, in the warrant article, what we're asking for is funding to remove the trees. That feels like a reasonable next step, especially since last winter, one of them fell over and made a big hole in the dam.
Yeah.
And so, it will continue to happen. So,
It'll also give you something to break the state.
to write the state about, exactly.
I have just one,
As we do with you.
Yeah, no,
Worth like 50,000.
The warrant funding doesn't have to do with the phase 1 inspection 2025.
it does actually. Go to the next.
It's a schedule.
Okay.
Where are the
He
EAP?
had it in this
So we
presentation.
go to the next.
I have a quick question. Who are the EAP recipients?
Excuse
The
me.
EAP recipient, emergency action plan.
Emergency action plan.
Who are the recipients, the neighbors or who are
No, it's like the select board and the
Oh,
DPW and people like that. And then, yeah, we have requested funding. That's the slide. I kind of said that before. But we keep being denied. And
How
then
much would it cost to remove the dam? Like,
around $1 million. And notice there are 3 options. And the way that the consultant has reviewed them, which again, I have some bones to pick with on that, but the way that they are reviewed, they estimated in 2021 around 880,000 for each of the options, which would be about $1 million.
See page 2, paragraph 2 of the letter.
He actually had the slide.
Sorry.
I'm talking about the cost of $1 million.
Yeah,
Kind of fits into the roof discussion.
but and so the idea would be is that what we're trying to do is spend 50,000 to avoid spending $1 million is kind of where we're at. Or to delay,
No, it's a delay.
and it, again, that whole discussion about how we should proceed, that would be like a whole other meeting about.
Yeah, I just wanna, I know there's a lot this is it's been talked about by the select board. There's sort of 2 views of thought on this. One is if you remove the dam, I think you're right, they seem to favor that. Then the pond gets drained.
Yeah.
And the people who live around that pond, they don't like,
oh,
because they lose their waterfront property.
Yeah, but they're the ones who gave the thing to the town in the first place.
No, these are different.
1993, whatever.
Different essence, but So there's, there's a group of people who are neighbors that they want to repair the thing. They don't want to take it up.
But I think
And
that,
so that's the tension.
Thank you.
I think I probably.
Oh, we're not gonna solve that.
We're not gonna solve
that.
All that, but I will say that I think I probably lived in town for 30 years before I realized it was there.
But that was my question, is that it might be.
The dam or the pond?
Either.
Oh, we drive by it every day.
You
so,
drive by
yeah.
and just
Right,
like,
that was my question, was that, the town apparently owns this really nice pond, there's no like public access to it.
there is public access, you can park on the side of Route 27.
Uh-huh.
And then I did it today, actually, you can walk in and you can walk across the dam, and then there's some land on the side between Route 27 and the pond, which
Yeah,
the
check it
town owns. And people do use it to fish.
I'm just saying, you're fishing.
It's not very deep, it's about 2 feet deep.
Okay, so.
And then, again, it's almost for another day, but to really make it a good recreational pond, we probably would also have to spend another $1 million to dredge.
Right.
What are next steps?
You have more slides?
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry. Keep going.
What are next steps to figure out?
And
Forward with,
we really don't have to go over this. It's just, we probably.
like,
talked about
whether
this
we
a little
drain
bit.
it or
Maybe the budget.
continue to maintain.
Yeah, this is really just around the ongoing. Yeah,
Well, I think Ashley has a question.
actually,
To figure out whether we drain or maintain the dam, what are next steps?
asking the people in the town what they would like to do.
Not after this warrant, that's some other.
That's-
So that would be like.
Yeah, that's not the.
That'll be with your
This is
chair.
not our problem.
I think that the select board should initiate action on this. I think,
That's John's opinion right now.
yes, my opinion.
So the commission, which has care testing control of the pond, hasn't really had that discussion yet, other than to try to start the conversation. And part of that was prompted by the tree falling a year ago this past January and necessitating work at the pond on an emergency basis. Because of the problem, it's an earthen berm that's part of the impoundment. And when the tree ripped out, the root ball came out and compromised that area of the earthen berm right next to the spillway. And there's another dead tree that's right next to it. So if you look, you'll see a number of very tall, old pines all in a row along that line. And they should all be moved.
Let me ask you a question. If the commission has care company control of this property, why would the select board get involved?
Yeah, that's really a good question, and it would be, in my view, it would be because it's a question which impacts the whole town, and it's really a town-wide thing that almost needs to be brought at a town meeting.
Because you don't have the budget.
Well, correct. It would be a town meeting warrant article.
Yeah.
Because it's so much money, and so.
But you can bring it forward in our.
Yes.
And the goal actually was to start the conversation this spring and this summer. Because particularly the people who live around the pond will be really concerned about any conversation that unfolds. And so people have an opportunity to do their research and acquire their information. The information we have now is several years old from our engineering, from 3 or more years old. In terms of the studies that they did and the 3 alternatives that they presented. And so it all needs to be updated. And we did actually ask them, would those costs change at all if in fact some of the work could be done and was done by DPW? And the way that the dollars were estimated at the time doesn't allow them to give us that sort of breakout figure at this point in time. So we don't really have a basis for judging in terms of what those costs would look like for each alternative. But the goal was to start the conversation because we are historically spending money on grant applications, asking for money that we know pretty much we're not going to get, because the money right now, the grant money available is for removing dams more than it is for repairing. So a lot more money.
They've asked twice the state for money to repair the dam, and the state takes the position that they would like to give.
Yeah, I mean,
They want.
Everyone wants to remove them.
to be fair, the state has funded some dam restoration projects as well. But honestly, it's facilities that have way more recreational potential than this.
What,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
This is a small.
what's preventing you from having this be like a $200,000 warrant? why are we? It feels like you sort of want some other action to be taken, but we can do it.
We could easily ask for more. I had the impression this was all that was potentially on offer.
That's just.
Do you think that's all we're gonna do?
Yeah, I was just.
Yeah,
I
I
want to understand the numbers. I can see you detail. I'm going to that schedule for the 67,487. You have that on the next schedule.
On the next,
It's the 20, it's the 23, the 20 and the 24, 480. That all adds up to the 67,487. But after you spend that, you're saying you have $26,000 left?
no, the 26,000 is the residual from the contracted work that was.
That they're gonna use that.
So you're gonna use that 26, but that leaves you with absolutely nothing afterwards.
Yes.
So are those hard numbers you have? I mean, I just think you might ask for more, because what if you find out in the middle of the project it's gonna cost you another $5,000?
The numbers are not hard, and they're arguably such that you could, honestly, the way I look at it, you could adjust the scope to match what you had available, if that's all you can get.
We would end up being staged, I think is more correctly stated, because the trees are identified by regulation in terms of where you can have woody vegetation and where you can have trees. And there's a lot of material that needs to be removed to comply with regulations. So it's not like you can change the scope of work. The scope would still be the same, you just stage
You can change it.
and do it that way.
But I think do all of it, you do hard.
I think at one point there was an old estimate and you didn't like it, and you went at your own, right? So this is your estimate. This is not somebody telling you.
This is not, it is roughly consistent with the PAR estimate. If you update it to today's dollars, it's close.
Okay.
It's not terribly different, but
It's not accurate.
You'll match the scope.
It's within the ballpark.
yeah, it's small.
It's not far.
It's not, we don't have front quotes.
John, I
Yes.
really don't want to.
No, go ahead.
Are you saying that it's your perception or think that if we wanted to remove the dam, the state would kick in some money?
Don't know. We haven't asked the question. I don't know.
It would be a grant application.
Be a grant application. I think it's more likely to be approved than the ones we filed so far. But
It's-
The ones we cut apart were paired.
yes,
Right.
So if we said, okay,
we give up.
uncle, you win, we'll remove the dam, and then the state kicks in 250,000, that's sort of significant, right?
It's a lot more than that, but yeah, but the issue is, the reason they haven't done that is because the neighbors wanted it to be repaired. So they went that route to make
And-
everybody happy.
Be a town meeting vote, because even if you get 150,000 from the state,
You still need
you
more.
still need a significant amount. of
Understood.
money.
And I probably should say one other thing is that the dam removal can become complicated. And it's more difficult to estimate in a lot of ways because of the sediment beyond the dam. If that's at all contaminated, that would increase the cost a great deal. And you don't, they added, the PAR engineers added a series of things that were sort of anticipated that would be required as part of the environmental review if you remove the dam, around the idea of like invasives removal. They have a line item of $100,000 for removal of invasives for the dam removal option, but not any of the other options. So it's like, well, what's that? You know, like, why would you do it for one but not the others? And so there are questions that I would have when I go through it.
We don't know the nature and extent of the basis
Yeah.
would be there, there may be no or minimal.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
In the interest of time here, that we limit our questions to the article, which is a request for $50,000. Just, we're not gonna solve all these other.
There's
They're
a lot to
interesting,
talk about.
but there's a lot to talk about. We're not.
Give them the 50K. We can settle that quick.
My only question was in your letter, you mentioned that you wanted, the way you, I don't know, is this meant to be the motion you would make?
I think that's been updated, that the language has been updated to reflect that.
Does it come from free cash? Is that what it looks like?
Yes.
Okay. That's how the motion would be worded.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
Yes, and we got that up there.
okay.
But the only thing that's really weird, just within this article, it feels a little bit like what you really wish you would do is not what you wrote down in this article that you submitted. That's the only thing that's a little odd. Is that you sort of have this aspiration that we have some action that we would take as a town, but you limited it to. So you submitted a article that was more narrowly tailored.
It's a reasonable first step. We're not gonna do the whole project.
It's the art of the possible.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in their defense, they have raised this issue. 2019.
I'm not taking a side. I'm just-
They-
I don't think they need any defense at all. I think they have to.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
It's only been on probation now for just a little over 2 years. It's done a huge
Totally.
amount of work because we have tried and people are doing this and they're spending a lot of time. The people who are available to do it are spending a lot of time. It's done a huge amount of work. And it's an engineering profession. So there's a huge skill set to what he's doing. And we've been able to make this progress. I think that there are pieces of information that we don't have yet, because we're still trying to really like master some facts. We're trying to learn about your budgeting process and how the timing works. I mean, we've struggled. So we have since 2019, we had without a conservation, 2021, we had a full-time conservation or even full-time, part-time conservation agent. And then we had an interim agent who's really just trying to manage our permitting. So a lot of the administrative pieces of something can we were trying to manage ourselves. And so, John's the science kind of guy and I do the legal administrative piece until we have more staffing. So I think you may be seeing a lot of that struggle. And what we're presenting to you is just trying to master some of the process and thinking this is a really good step to try to explain, so you can understand the concerns and try to take a step forward. And even if you can't support the article, we can tell the state that we brought it right to them.
That we decided to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, my suggestion, the article is fairly straightforward, right? The reason to do this, I don't see a lot. Not gonna vote on it tonight, but I think my advice would be that, things get done in this town when there's involvement from with the budget, the committees and groups. And maybe getting a group together, neighbors, your committee, and maybe some other people who have an interest in this, to try to work towards something that, everybody can agree. Yeah, there's not agreement, right?
Right.
And there was a goal with this, to start the conversation and to.
But you have care custody control, so, you can take some leadership on it.
Yeah,
That's what we thought we were doing.
Yeah.
Like the link to guys down the conversation.
No, that's just my advice.
No.
I think, we'll certainly discuss it as a committee more or continue to, but I think it's difficult to say that the committee should try and make a decision for the town.
Not without involving that many people.
It's starting,
It'll just fail.
starting the conversation, which is what our plan was to really get this going this summer. We're doing the pond survey and with the money that we get at town meeting last year, the $20,000, and that will contribute to this as well.
That actually is very helpful in terms of trying to work out, well, what is this pond good for and how we articulate that. Yeah, town.
So we can building.
Are there any other questions on this? If not, maybe we could go to the second part.
So the second article is the Conservation Trust Fund. And historically, it was a surprise to me. I went through the town meeting reports to find out that I knew, because I've been on the commission for a long time, so I knew that for each year starting back when I was on in the early 2000s, that the commission would request $5,000 a year for the Conservation Trust Fund, and that money accumulated over time as an interest bearing account out of this investment activity that it's just interest bearing, but it accumulated over time. And we believe that at one time when Red Bank Farm was purchased, that there was a contribution from the Conservation Trust Fund to support that. And then more recently, in 2019, there was a contribution towards one of the park engineering reports for surveys for Danielson Pond. And that was about $30,000. At the time, I'm not sure the commission really understood the nature and extent of that, but they voted to do that. So we're down to about $16,000 now in that conservation trust fund account, and we haven't requested any money since 2019. And the request is really made to start to replenish that account because it is intended for something broader. I gave you a copy of the statute of chapter 40, section 8C, which gives you the scope of authority that Concom has and shows you the different things that the money could be used for in addition to acquiring, leasing, managing land management, as well as trail maps and brochures on the open space and recreation plan and things like that. So it's really seeking $5,000 to add to that account so that there's money available. I would just add of the open space in Medfield, Concom has care custody control of 50%, slightly more than that, and this is the money that we have to manage those properties for signage or whatever else. And Redgate Farm is a particular focus, in addition to Daniels and Palm, because there's just a lot of activity there that would not be consistent with sort of like the rules of conservation plans and just cutting trees and creating new and extra trails and things like that. It would be nice to be able to have some more public outreach and signage. So that's what it's for. It's to start that process of building.
And this would cover free cash.
That's my understanding. And then can I ask just a question? Though, because just when I was back, as I said, looked in the warrant, historically, it looked like it was a capital budget item or request for the first,
Well, I mean,
So I can answer that if you want. So we changed the capital budget process and procedure, so this wouldn't qualify
It
as
wouldn't
an
qualify.
ongoing funding, so it would qualify.
okay, all right, see.
yeah, when they created the capital budget committee, they put in the changes and processes.
Okay,
And they defined what a capital item is. So it has to have like
Because like in the past, most of what this was spent for was like Redgate Park, for example, which was clearly a capital item. That's what was confusing.
well,
Yeah.
let's-
Yeah, we didn't consider land purchase as being a component.
Yeah, land purchase is not a
okay,
not a
no,
capital. But there, I think ongoing maintenance, that's not a capital.
Yeah, that clearly is it, but I fail to, again, I don't want to know maybe, but why land purchase wouldn't be capital. But
Well, we don't.
It's not within the confines of the
Yeah.
discussion of the capital budget. Capital budget, we're looking for a 20-year plan, so you're not planning out what you're going to buy in terms of plan.
It's like equipment,
Placement, yeah.
and
it would-
vehicles and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
so there's really not
Computers and it's
of anything that's Concom would do.
land, any type of land acquisition would have to go through debt. There's very specific procedures on disposing of land that the town has to follow, and it would be, a debt exempt over.
I mean, I believe you guys. I just,
Yeah, because the numbers would be big, and we only have $1 million for the whole town in our yearly capital budget. We have to take care of at least cars. It's like,
It's matched depreciable assets. The amortization.
Okay, that makes sense. So there's probably very little at Concom.
That's a good way to think of
I mean, if you have,
Unless we had a car.
I don't know, especially
Nobody's getting cars.
With our auger.
would a sign be something that would go through a capital? There's a
Or-
dollar limit too, so it has to be over.
So we had this discussion last year in my office. This conservation trust fund allows you to do operations, capital, maintenance. You can do those things. So if you need signage, you can purchase it without appropriation from the conservation trust.
Believe me, it's a lot easier. You control it all yourself, so not like
Yeah.
you have to.
Feels
bus
enormous
and-
power.
Over $16,000. Conservation trust fund.
Okay, so, then, if you do have a capital item that meets the requirements of their policy, you have the ability to submit that to the plan. But land is not, you know,
Not,
it's something other. Anything else on this particular article? I think it's fairly straightforward. I mean, I understand this will go into your the trucks and you guys control how it's spent. It's covered by regulations. You can spend it.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the oversight for the trust?
From the subdivision.
Commissioners, no one else, not really in planning or.
How much have you
or
spent
doing
on it?
or-
How much have you spent on it?
things like 30,000, we gave 30,000 to.
That was in 2019.
That was-
Yeah, 2019, I don't know that we spent anything.
I think maybe since then,
Yeah.
none.
Oh, okay. Is that because you're not gonna need or? That question might come up.
Yeah.
Why do you need this money if you're not spending it?
Well, again, it was, in part, it was envisioned that was to help jumpstart like something like a land acquisition if land were available that were suitable that the town wanted to purchase, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, my personal opinion on this that you would never have enough money to buy land in that trust.
But, I mean,
You shouldn't think of that money as that for that purpose, even though you technically might be able to. You always are gonna have to do a debt override, you know, but you'll never have enough in this. trust.
It would take about 400 years.
Yes.
But I think that there are more needs. So for example, just when we see the Great Gate Farm with it's a lot of activity, that a public, outreach campaign would require probably some funds. For trail maps, we have a new commissioner and he was reminded by a neighbor that the existing trail maps show entry to trails to his property and it's wrong. So there are some things that that we would want to particularly get online, in digital format, pieces like that. And that might require, we haven't gotten that far yet. We're hoping to put together a land management advisory board to the Conservation Commission to try to identify and prioritize some of these things and investigate associated costs in terms of what makes sense and just provide that information and identify where the issue areas are. Right now, I would just say that, for example, there are people on the Medfield Wildlife Committee, my brother-in-law, Frank Perry, and so those folks who are actually responsible for managing and running the deer felling program are out on these properties all the time. And so they have first-hand information and they bring that back to town hall and to the Conservation Commission to identify what the issues are. And when they do, we don't have really any mechanism for any kind of meaningful enforcement. And it's not really enforcement that you want to do, it's that public outreach and campaign and just some signage and things like that. So those would be some of the costs.
Yeah, okay, good. It's good to think about that because I think, anytime you ask for money, this happened with the money that we're getting from MassWorks. They said, well, you haven't spent what we gave you already. Why do you want more money? Yeah. That's what could happen. You could say, well, what are you spending on?
Yes, and I think we're just fearful that at $16,000, we could have one, sort of project that would take up a lot of that money and beyond.
Not in the operating budget, like, why are we doing $5,000 with a special one? Isn't there like a normal operating budget line item for?
Well, trust exists. It has a specific purpose.
So I would think you would want to do the conservation trust fund because the commissioners want to be able to spend it without appropriation. And to put it in the operating budget gives them a year within which to spend it. The conservation trust fund continues to exist and accrue each year. So if they put the $5,000 in there, it wouldn't be able to, it expires on June 30th. So you wouldn't be able to hold on to it if they wanted to do a land purchase.
Yeah, that would have gone to free cash if it was in an operating budget. Long time ago, in 2019.
This is just coming in free cash, so it's like a circular.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it seems matching.
But it gives them the ability to sort of build up a balance to maybe do something else with it.
Yeah.
You can't build a balance.
It is, it's such a small amount of money each year that it is, that you're not really gonna buy land.
Yeah.
But you could contribute to it psychologically, like, that's the idea.
Anything else on this particular $1,000? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
You've been doing all the work you guys do. It's a lot to,
Thank you very much.
manage, so thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Here's the deal.
Thanks.
Here's the pond.
You asked the question, why did we take the thing?
Well,
Why do we accept it?
I have been asking myself this. You probably had a net negative value. The town.
Well, but it has, yeah, it's like the hospital, it's a liability, like the cost.
The family knew what the family was doing when they donated.
Was that?
The family knew what it was doing when they donated.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
It was smart. No.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We don't need this deal.
It's me. Talk to us about. So we have final department update on final budgets. Departments. Oh, I'm sorry.
What are you doing, Maria?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
I'm here to the end, so go ahead.
She's used to it. Christine lives here.
Well, apply for one of those exemptions.
All right, Maria. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back.
Welcome back. We do have a presentation from you, I guess.
Yes.
An ADU update. We talked about this before, and you were gonna, go back, think about it, talk to the planning board.
And the zoning board,
And
yes.
zoning board, and so if she's done that, and she's here tonight.
Back by popular demand. So, last night we had our public hearing with the planning board in which we finalized the ADU bylaw, and in which I extended some of the feedback from the Warrant Committee. And last week we had a joint meeting between the planning board and the zoning board. The planning board will be the enforcing agency for like most of these cases, but in some cases the zoning board will be the agency approving. So we wanted to make sure we had consensus and a realistic approach.
Yeah.
So this is my updated presentation to reflect those changes. I implemented your feedback, or I think I did. So if I miss anything, let me know and I'll update this before next week. The definition of ADU can be found on the screen. I think that's something just to start off. It's a self-contained housing unit, has sleeping, cooking, and sanitary facilities in the same lot as the principal dwelling, and it has it's subject to applicable dimensional and parking requirements. Has a separate entrance. It can be from the outside or through the inside, and it has to meet building and fire code for safe egress. That's really what regulates the entrance. They may be detached, attached, or internal. And when I talk about ADUs here, we have two types. We're gonna have the protected use and the local ADUs, and I'll get into each. Next slide. And again, just for anyone watching tonight, this is just some visual examples of what ADUs look like. I know we went over this 2 weeks ago, so I want to be repetitive, but visual reference help. We discussed at the last time we met, what is the state law? So the state has passed a new housing law for protected use ADUs. And this is section 8 of chapter 150 of the Act of 2024. And the state now allows by right ADUs if they meet certain criteria. And that criteria is that they have to be either 900 square feet or 50% of the principal dwelling's gross floor area, whichever of the two is the smallest. And this is what we call a protected use ADU. These are allowed in single family residential zones without requiring a special permit or a variance. So it's really just a building permit.
And owner occupancy cannot be required for either the ADU or the main dwelling. Again, this is what's currently in place effective as of February 2nd of this year. The state is giving us some latitude for regulations. So the town may enforce reasonable setbacks, height restrictions, and site plan review, and sometimes under very limited circumstances, even a discretionary approval process, like a special permit. Municipalities may prohibit or regulate short-term rentals, which is rentals of 31 days or fewer. Again, this is an option that the state is giving us. And the next slide, we can find what happens if we don't pass our own bylaw. So the state law will still apply with or without a local bylaw. If we do not adopt an updated Taylor ADU bylaw, then Medfield's current bylaw, which permits only family or in-law apartments through a special permit, will become obsolete and unenforceable, but it would remain on our books to cause confusion for residents and applicants. I've already had people call and tell me what's going on. So it's already
You're
happening.
getting a call.
I'm getting the calls. The state regulations allowing for ADU by right would supersede local control. So any ADU up to 900 square feet or 50% of the main dwelling's GFA could be built simply with the building permit. No local review will be permitted. One of the dangers here is that if the applicant wanted to put like our side setbacks here are strongly suggested to be 12 feet to the side, but if someone wanted to put it 2 feet to the side property line and we have no bylaw, have to allow it, it's protected. And I find that a little concerning, and I would like to safeguard some of the neighbors' interests. So without a local bylaw, Medfield would lose the ability to review or mitigate potential impacts on neighboring homes and properties, including proximity concerns. If you're really close to the property line, you may want some privacy. You may want some bushes or a fence or some sort of thing that I could not require it and the building commissioner could not require it, but a board can. Or board could at least very strongly suggest or influence. So we want to be able to implement stormwater management measures to protect against increased flooding and runoff resulting from unchecked construction. Again, with just a by right, they can build our maximum lot coverage in many parts of town is 15%. So you ADU rate to 25%. That's 10% over what's allowed. What happens with the runoff? It's untreated. You know, we're not removing dangerous chemicals. We're not controlling for volume. All of that in new impervious area. We're cutting trees. You just allow it. So that would be the no bylaw scenario. And we have no means of permitting larger ADUs in appropriate locations where the property sites and conditions can support that. Ultimately, if we don't adopt an updated bylaw, Medfield forfeits critical local oversight necessary to ensure responsible and community aligned growth and development that is already happening. We get to have a say, and we should exercise a say to protect both.
This is great.
Yeah, that was really scary.
Thank you.
Scary.
No, I think it's good. So what we're trying to propose to address this, and this is a little chart. I know it's kind of tiny, but hopefully you read it a little bit in advance and I can explain it. So here's some if-then scenarios. If your ADU is under 900 square feet, meaning it's a protected ADU because of the size, and you meet all of the setbacks, which include lot coverage, and you're not in any sort of aquifer protection district or in a flood zone, then you get a building permit. Like you're the right distance away, you're not gonna cause any increased flooding, you're within every right development condition, and it's a small ADU, have at it, building permit, you're all set. If you're under 900 square feet, but you are either too close to the side or it's too much lot coverage for your area, or sometimes like you can make the house is already too close and you're making it even closer to like the rear setback. So you're making something worse. Or you're creating a new non-conforming zoning that didn't exist before. So if you're creating any sort of zoning issue, but you're not in an aquifer protection district or flood zone, then I just want the planning board to be able to look at these protected use ADUs again because of size. We cannot really deny them, but we can regulate them a little bit. And I want to have the privacy concerns in mind. If there is an abutter that's like 100 feet away, you know, the house is built away, fantastic. Maybe you don't have to do anything. But there are denser areas of town which we should take into consideration, which way are the windows facing, and you know, like just be able to create development that aligns more closely with your neighborhood. If your ADU is under 900 square feet, so again, a protected ADU, and you're converting a non-conforming being important here, pre-existing non-residential structure. So that means you have a barn, right, or a carriage house, and it's already super close, but it's already built, and it's small. We're gonna do it through site plan approval to the planning board, and this is because we, again, when you have a structure, the environmental impacts are already there. The trees have been cut, the stormwater has already, the runoff is what the runoff is. But when you convert a structure that used to be non-residential and they put people who will live there 24/7, again, you get into those privacy concerns, safety. We just want to be able to have a board look at it and be able to have some sort of persuasive capacity or just regulatory agency. Now we get into what is considered a local ADU. So this is Medfield's option to allow for larger ADUs, so larger than 900. And because we're being super generous here, the state allows us to permit this through a discretionary approval process. If you don't want to go through a yes, maybe no process, make it smaller. And then it's protected. But if you are insisting on a larger ADU for whatever needs you may have, we are suggesting that you can only have it under perfect development conditions. You have to meet all the setbacks they're telling you to meet, and you have to have adequate lot coverage. If that's the case, you still have to go through a special permit through the zoning board of appeals. And again, meeting all dimensional setbacks or especially lot coverage, that's pretty rare in Medfield. So it's just something to be considered. Most ADUs are going to be under 900 square feet. And for reference, that's like the average 2-bedroom apartment. 1,200 square foot home is usually like a 3-bedroom apartment for reference. And then we get into conversions. If I have a mega barn, so regardless of the setback, it's pretty big, you should be able to do something about it. But because it's so big, we're taking it through the zoning board. We again just want to have into consideration the size of a living unit. And the last case is if your ADU is in an aquifer protection district or in a flood zone, regardless of the size of it, because you're in an environmentally sensitive area, we want to be very mindful of what we put back into our aquifers. We want to make sure that the water quality is good. People who have, like well water or just in general for our environment. So we are requiring that if you are in an aquifer protection district, then you have to get a special permit so we can require it through your home review. And this is a normal permitting process. So it wouldn't really change much to how we do things on the day-to-day if you are constructing something on the aquifer districts. And this only applies to new construction or to a building footprint expansion. Yeah.
Does the state law allow that 6th one? If you're in an aquifer protection district of what's
Yes.
they do allow you to, right?
Yes, and they specifically have given us the option to opt in. And I think we should take it because Medfield has been very proactive about creating the aquifer districts and monitoring.
Yeah.
But it is an option, so I vote the exercise or whatever it was.
Good.
And then in the next slide, I'm going to have some other highlights of the bylaw. As I mentioned before, owner occupancy is not required under state law. There's nothing we can do. If I wanted to have a house and an ADU and I wanted to move to Florida, I can rent out both units and that's just state law. Or I don't think this is going to be a common thing, especially in Medfield. I think it's very residential. People are here because of the excellent school system. So I think most people will want to stay here, but it is an option and we have no control over it. So I'll check that out. For short-term rentals, we are prohibiting them for accessory dwelling units. The state law allows us to choose whether to permit or prohibit short-term rentals for ADUs, and Medfield currently prohibits short-term rentals townwide. So this aligns with our existing bylaw. And we're limiting 1 ADU per lot. The state law permits towns to cap an ADU at 1 per property or to allow multiple ADUs through special permits. I don't believe the town would love to have multiple ADUs in the lot. The planning board agreed, so we're limiting it to 1 ADU per lot. And this applies to either protected ADUs or local ADUs. We have issued a lot of special permits over the years for in-law family apartments, and I don't want someone to say, that's a bigger one, that's local ADU, I still get to have my by right protected use ADU, and now you find a loophole and you get to have it. So I made it very clear.
This limit of one ADU per lot, that is allowing you to have that restriction.
Correct, yes.
So good.
Yes.
So that would a lot of big
You know,
development.
multi-family ADUs.
The thing Gus talked about, when big
Correct.
Blackstone comes in, and they like,
We don't want necessarily a big explosion in development.
yeah.
Well, we want to measure development, and ADUs count towards your total housing units. They don't count towards your affordable housing. So something to consider is that 10% target
Yeah.
is a moving target.
Could go up.
So-
Yeah.
Yes, so I think, again, if we decide that, oh, it's a great idea, we can always go back and change it. I think we should start with the most conservative bylaw and move from there.
Yeah.
And parking requirements, yes.
So one ADU per lot.
Mhm.
If someone put in an in-law apartment 20 years ago.
Mhm.
So what this is saying, you can't put in a second one, even though it was there
Yeah.
a long time ago?
Yeah, you get like just one more, that's it. Even if it's a super old one, even if it was only one family, now it is just considered an ADU, pre-existing one, so you don't get.
You can't put three on your backyard.
And for parking requirements, we are, with the max we can allow by state law is one per ADU. So we're taking that one, requiring, and the bylaw says if you're outside of the transit station area, and we are outside of the station area, so that's the language.
Thank you very much. Very good. Much.
Great, thank
Easier
you.
to understand and kind of to the point, and I think it's excellent.
Yeah, I would just reveal nit, like there's a couple, within those first two slides, the last bullet in each one of those slides, I would have moved it up to the beginning.
The last bullet,
Only, you know, like the new law went into effect in February 2nd, 2025, and it shows that you're being very proactive.
Oh, got it.
It's kicking. But the second one, there's ultimately without adopting an updated bylaw that, you know, quote, it's critical local oversight necessary to ensure responsible community aligned growth and development.
Mhm.
I put that right up front.
Okay.
Frankly, because I think that's the whole,
Mhm.
that's the.
That's the big one.
You're doing it, you know.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, we want to.
Bylaw, and you're making it work for us.
And in terms of the actual bylaw, assuming this was approved. Like tonight.
we made some minor edits, there were some redundancies that we have since cut. I will give Frank the most updated language and I'll circulate. There wasn't any substantial changes, we just clarified things, minor things. Some things were stated twice.
Was the bylaw one, the warrant one saying, please see the bylaw?
This is actually printed in the warrant.
Yeah. Put it straight in.
Straight, right in the warrant. For zoning articles, it can be very lengthy.
Question on that last parking requirement just occurred to me. Let's say you have a house with 2-car garage, and you got a big backyard, and you put in an ADU.
Mhm.
Where's the parking, the specific parking space for that unit? Do you have the driveway, you have a 2-car garage, that's all you have. So what would be the space for that ADU?
You would have to, anywhere off-site, we cannot require more, because it's not off the street. So you either
Oh, so
find
you find room in your driveway.
yeah, you
Okay.
can share the driveway.
Alright.
You can park in the grass,
Okay.
whatever you want to do, but it, maybe not the
Right.
grass, but.
I understand, okay.
Yes.
This was approved by the planning committee and submitted.
Well, this is.
It was approved last night.
That's not the proof. It's gonna be printed in the warrant. Any other questions for Maria?
That's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Really
Good job.
Thank you. So your feedback was amazing and I feel much better now.
We get that.
Well, Christine is coming up.
Thank you.
So the next agenda is discussion of the final 2026 department. Well, I'll just give a quick update on the status of the school department, but you may remember that they were $300,000 short of our target guidance. And we have not voted on anything yet. This Thursday, we have a meeting, school committee, and they have on the agenda to look at, to look at potential cuts and potentially vote on individual cuts. But they will vote on, and then another vote that actually take is the vote on the total budget, school department total budget, the guidance that we provided them. Vote on this number.
Nothing's changed.
They may not get through all of the cuts. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it may go into the next meeting, which I think is April 10th. You know, so finally have all the, but for our purposes, we wanted them to at least vote on the total, because that's all we really can control anyway. So, so that we can move forward with the, you know, the big omnibus budget, the warrant book and all that stuff. So, is there anything else?
No, other than they basically separated their cuts into these impact student services and these cuts don't.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's gonna be a menu of items for the school committee to look at and say, which ones are we gonna approve, in addition to approving the total number?
Yeah.
Which ones of the 300,000 we'll approve tonight? Maybe that's 200 out of the 300, and the other 100 they're gonna think about whether they want to do that or something else.
Yeah, he's gonna give them the superintendent's gonna give them a menu list of $500,000.
Oh.
To get to 300, they'll sort of pick and choose what they want to do. Yeah, that's the school. We don't have this Thursday. Hopefully we'll have a voted approved.
So I would encourage everyone to, if they can, to watch the school committee meeting, because like to be, so it's either one to the tape, so you can do it over the
I
weekend.
mean, they're struggling like everyone else, all of our other departments, other towns, you know, everybody's struggling to get to budgets this year, not just us. Sure, you've read about done the news and stuff like that. So there's a lot of them out there. But, so anyway, Christine, back to the town.
Okay.
So we have, she handed out this sheet, I guess.
You have two things in front of you. So we have balanced our budget. There may be, we have met the warrant committee guidance. There may be a few tweaks between departments here. We have a couple that we're just trying to finalize today. They're just small amounts, but on his structures, we are presenting you with a balanced budget. We have met the warrant committee guidance. We are in a little bit different of a situation in schools in that when we redid the warrant committee guidance, we had a significant number to cut. And so as we started working on those cuts, we had some changes to our existing budget. As you know, Fire Chief Carrico is retiring, and we have selected a new chief, which resulted in some cost savings to that department. We also settled the police contract. And so we had been holding money aside in order to fund that contract. And that came in slightly under the amount of money that I had set aside for that. So we were able to take that increase in what I call our town revenue, and we're able to fund a lot of the things we had put on hold when we had the warrant committee guidance revised. So We still have at least 3 larger items that we did not fund in this budget. We did not fund the Council on Aging staff position. We are not fully staffing the DPW grounds division. However, we've had a restructuring with the class and compensation study we did for the town. And the DPW with that reclassification can take on the grounds department. But that is the existing grounds, that is not adding any additional properties from Park and Rec and or the school department. So that is just the town municipal. And we
Can I just stop for a second? You mentioned council on aging.
Mhm.
I'm looking at this sheet, it has like a 58,000 proposed and
Mhm.
oh, that's the part of your budget, right? Okay,
Yes.
got it. That's the part.
Yeah.
Not what they asked.
No, no, no.
Okay.
And then the third thing that we had proposed in the first round of our budgeting was a floating clerk for the town hall. So we didn't fund those 3 things. There were some minor things we didn't fund, but those are 3 major positions or items that were funded. Other than that, we've been able to fund everything that we had identified as priority.
One of the things I did last year in the Warrant Committee hearing presentation. I listed out the unmet needs.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll improve on that.
And again, we were able to meet a lot of our guidance because of the cost savings we had within those 2 departments.
Like, look.
We are sad to see Carrico go, but you know, there's always a positive and opportunity on the other.
Questions on this? Thanks for getting to, I know it's not easy.
No, I have a great financial team. Frank's been working on this. I think we finalized it all. It's probably a couple of tweaks. I think we were pretty much final by 4:30 and then had a couple little items we need to readjust that we had made, but nothing major. And we'll stay with them.
On the grounds department, I thought it was a really great creative idea. You said you're not gonna be able to take over the school properties.
Not in this year, not in the, so we would need to add additional positions in order to do that.
So will those properties still continue to be funded out of the school department budget?
Yes, they're currently under private contract. And the select board did talk at their last meeting about a conversation with Parks and Recreation to determine the future of their properties and who should be maintaining them. That's a fiscal year 27.
And
You want
go ahead.
to cover, if there's no more questions on the budget.
Sure.
I just have a question on the budget.
Okay.
I don't know this, but in terms of the state aid, that, I know they have a budget, what's their process? Do they lock in, or do they lock in a number where it's guaranteed for the whole year based on what the budget's approved, or how does that work?
So we won't find out until after town meeting what the final state aid number is. They can at any given time during the year do what's called 9C cuts, and they can reduce that state aid. I think the last time they did that, I have to look back, I think it was between 2009 and 2011. Was the last time they did a mid-year budget that we were forced to call a special town meeting to reduce our existing budgets to meet that state aid.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's annoying to putting a budget together, so it's just, it's a process and it's consistent every year, so if they give you more money, it's, you start from a higher number next year, right? So you miss it this year, but you get it next year.
But, and that's also why we try to be conservative, so that if they do have 9C cuts, we're not impacted greater than by overestimating.
Okay.
Warrant articles.
Warrant articles.
Yep,
There's
make
been
sure
some
I have my copy.
changes, right?
There's been a few changes. We are down to 30 warrant articles.
I just gonna add one thing in terms of the budget. Yeah, we were in at the school meeting, right, it's in the school meeting as well. And, you know, they're in a difficult position for two reasons. One, obviously, the money. They're very much, on the superintendent, I think everyone is very clear that an override isn't what they're gonna pursue. But they also have the challenge that, you know, this is an elected board, it stands on its own. And there's an election next week, so one of the problems we have is, you know, having an election prior to the town meeting and, you know, a new group coming in, so they're in a, you know, they're in a challenging situation. I think they're working very hard to work with us, so I felt very confident coming out of the meeting that they would, you know, get to their number, but they have some challenges just to get it, hurting everything together.
Yeah, but we just met with the chair, so we don't really know.
Yeah, they can't speak with the committee when they're there.
All right.
Okay, so we had a couple of changes to our warrant articles, just changed the numbering. So a few that we removed, so we had proposed an article to change the ALF revolving fund name to the EMS revolving fund. We have pulled that article for this year. The select board voted last week that they are not going to pursue at this year's town meeting the authority to dispose of property at Medfield State Hospital. They will have more discussion about that coming year. Conservation Commission has withdrawn the water conservation private well restriction article. And under zoning articles, the select board have removed the revision of the inclusionary zoning article. Planning board is taking that under advisement and doing their research over this coming year. Now we are down to 30 articles.
Great.
Yes,
Good work.
moderator is very happy.
Why did the select board decide not to pursue that article and allow them to, to sell that?
They would like to be able to present a more defined project for that area, what they're going to do.
They're gonna, eventually they're gonna try to sell that. I mean, that's part of the game plan. Sell that.
It has been.
So I guess they can do that, but it wouldn't hurt them if they did it this year. I mean, it may not come to pass and they may not have something solid within the next year, but at least they would have that article behind them that they've got permission to.
They didn't think they would gain permission at this point.
Oh, they didn't think, okay. That answers my question.
Did you watch the meeting?
No.
Oh, it was a blockbuster.
There's a lot of.
Well, I was at that initial meeting.
Yeah.
But the one this past week was pretty.
Right.
Pretty.
But
Yeah,
that was,
they had another one, and there's still the same group of people, you know, kind of coming forward and objecting, so I think they decided to take some time and put a group together to kind of get input from people.
Yes, I think their plan is to put a committee together to investigate further and refine their idea and then bring it a more solid proposal.
I mean, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everybody here, but I think I did say at the meeting, like you all heard it, there's two good reasons to do it. It's all, you know, two problems we have. So I think they know kind of what our views are.
Yeah, and withdrawing the articles, not withdrawing, they, you know, at least two of the members agree with your discussion about that. So withdrawing it is not withdrawing it forever.
right.
They just wanted you more work on it.
You know, it's all the time to build a new Westfield school.
So you have a draft of the warrant articles in front of you. There's a few minor changes we have to make here and there on them, and then we'll start to put together the warrant report for the warrant hearing next week.
Yeah, we will probably voting. The operating budget, I'd like assuming the school committee get their votes this Thursday, I'd like to vote on that operating budget. There's a lot of work to get the angel fund.
Yes. I should comment, So we've put together the full budget worksheet for you. We have highlighted in yellow the school department budget. This is the guidance that you gave them. We've inserted that number as guidance, but I know they have not officially taken their vote yet. So earlier when I said we were presenting a balanced budget, I'm saying that we're presenting a balanced budget on the town side.
Yeah.
And then we'll wait for the school committee to vote on that, on the school.
All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else that you want to update on?
I think that's it.
Peter, anything on the school building committee?
It was meeting next week and nothing's happened since I. Something had happened. I don't know.
Okay. Couple budget committees done their work.
I think we normally still have to approve the initial building. I think that it was just I'm not sure what laid up there. I think there was some confusion about the document we were voting on.
We're all set.
They do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
No, I just want to add that, you know, every meeting, we have something that's, that comes up. Last meeting, we talked about roofs and that pops up, and then we talk about a dam that in another $1 million, so.
It's a million here, a million there.
Sometimes, sooner or later, it comes a lot of money, right? So. Keep it in mind. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right, Jill?
Yes. Yep, thanks all.
Say yes, Roger and I.
Right.